Hello, I'm Dr. Bill Waggoner. For today's Tuesday tip, I'd like to address 5 of the more frequently asked questions about primary zirconia crowns. Question number 1, is pulpal therapy required prior to placing the zirconia crown? This question is usually asked because there's a good bit more tooth structure removed for a zirconia crown preparation than for a stainless steel crown preparation. However, I believe that you'll find a consistent answer among all of the primary zirconia crown manufacturers. That is, caries should dictate the need for pulpal therapy, not the mere fact that you're placing a zirconia crown. Some ask, don't you have to do a lot of occlusal reduction for zirconia crowns, thereby compromising the pulpal horns? Actually, the amount of occlusal reduction for zirconia crowns is only about 0.5 millimeter or so more than for stainless steel crowns. The occlusal thickness of a zirconia crown varies across manufacturers, but it's generally between 0.7 to 1 millimeter thick. Now, I would add this caveat to my answer. If it is determined that pulpal therapy is needed, I would recommend the use of an MTA product, such as NuSmile's Neo MTA 2 or Neo Putty for your pulpotomy. Several clinical studies have shown MTA to be equal to or better than former creosol with regard to both clinical and radiographic success. Question number 2. What's the difference in size between a regular and a narrow first primary molar zirconia crown? Well, the buccal and lingual size for the molar crown is the same, but the mesial distal width of the narrow crown is approximately 0.5 millimeter smaller. So, when you have areas of space loss, the use of one or more narrow crowns will make fitting easier. But speaking of fitting back-to-back zirconia crowns, my recommendation is to completely prep and fit one crown first prior to prepping the adjacent tooth. Also realize, in areas where there's significant space loss, you're going to need a lot of circumferential reduction to fit as small a crown as possible. Question number 3. Can I sterilize zirconia crowns? If you use the NuSmile Try-In crowns, sterilization of the white crowns is not anticipated, but the Try-In crowns must be sterilized after each use. If you must sterilize any other zirconia crowns, the autoclave or steam sterilization is recommended. It will not affect the strength of the crowns, and only repeated sterilizations have the potential to affect the color or shade. Question number 4. What ADA code is used for zirconia crowns, and is there a different one for anterior and posterior crowns? The answer is there's only one code, 2929. It's used for both anterior and posterior crowns. However, as many of you know, even though there is an ADA code, there are still very few insurance companies that actually cover zirconia crowns, especially when placed on the molars. The 5th and final question for today is, can I use a bite stick to seat the zirconia crown? The answer is, please don't try. The fit of the zirconia crown should be passive, and the crown should be seated with finger pressure. If a bite stick is needed, the preparation is not passive enough, and breakage, especially of the cervical margin, is highly likely. So there are answers to 5 frequently asked questions about primary zirconia crowns. I hope if any of you have other questions that you would feel free to email me at wwaggoner1@nusmile.com. I'll either address them by email or in a future Tuesday tip, likely both ways. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next week.